Okay, so for my disability this week, I had a congenital right upper extremity amputation. So the first question I want to answer is what did you learn from this experience and how will it help you to be a better clinician? I said that it gave me a little bit of insight into what our patients could be going through. It makes me realize how sometimes I kind of just go into autopilot when I'm doing things and I don't even think about it. So I would just do stuff with my right hand, do stuff with my left hand. I don't even think about what hand I use. But for this, I realized how much I do use my right hand, and then when I didn't have the ability to use it, it really made an impact on me. And then I really had to start planning things out. So for each situation, I had to really think about what I was going to do and how I was going to do it. So for example, like carrying groceries. I had a hard time figuring out, okay, I have to carry the groceries in my right hand, and that means I have to reach for them with my left hand because I can't grab them with my right hand. Or going to the bathroom or washing my hands, I could only wash my left hand. Or cooking food was really hard. And it kind of puts it into perspective for us. Ours is such a minimal comparison, but it does give us a little bit of a sneak peek of what these people go through on an everyday basis. The next question is, what did you learn about the ADL-IDL process? I learned a lot about how much I rely on my right hand, like I said earlier. I also said how I do feel like I go into autopilot for a lot of things, and I don't even realize how much I'm using my hands for or what I'm using them for. So for ADLs, I said bathroom. I said I struggled with pulling my pants up after I went to the bathroom. That was really hard. I wore jeans the first day, and after that I didn't because buttoning them was so difficult with just one hand. Also, putting my contacts in with my left hand was extremely difficult, and I don't kind of comparing it to our group theory of PEO. I thought that it's really important to me to wear my contacts. I don't like the way I look at my glasses. I'm not comfortable in them, so wearing my glasses really wasn't a choice because I don't feel comfortable in them and I don't want to wear them. So it's important to me to put my contacts in, so it took me a little bit longer to learn how to do it with my left hand rather than my right hand. For dressing, I found that it took me a lot longer to get ready. I didn't anticipate for that. Buttons are really difficult. Zippers weren't too bad. It was really just the buttons. Putting shirts on wasn't bad at all either. For IADLs, cooking, I didn't find the cooking itself to be too difficult, just some things were a little awkward to do. But then I realized once I cooked the chicken, I had to cut it, and that's where I struggled. I couldn't figure out how to stabilize the chicken and cut it with just one hand, so I ended up having to hold the fork in between my arm and my stomach and then cut with my left hand. And laundry, I also found that putting my laundry away was difficult, so putting stuff on the hangers or folding socks, I didn't even think about that until I was doing it. And I was like, oh, that's actually really difficult. For my next two questions, I chose explain with examples how you were able to identify and implement solutions to challenges you came across. So I kind of just talked about it, but when I cooked the chicken, I realized I couldn't cut it. So I put it between my arm and my stomach, and then I would cut it with my left hand. And that's one of my pictures that I submitted. And then also laundry was really hard, like I said, so I ended up putting my clothes on my bed, and then I'd put one end of the hanger in because I hang all my clothes, so putting one end of my hanger in, and then I would hold down the other side with my arm, and then I put the other part in. That made it a little bit easier, but it was still really tricky. And then folding the socks, I would just kind of do on pushing against my side, so I had something else to hold so I could roll it. My next question is, do you feel this assignment is controversial? Please justify. I said, I think it could be seen as controversial, but to the Penn Yang community or outsiders who aren't at CUCA, because I feel like CUCA students are very aware that this is an assignment that the OT students do and that they expect it every year and they are used to it. Whereas people in the community just really think that it is that's our, they think we have those disabilities, and I think that it could be seen as controversial when people are staring at you and they're like, okay, you look for me, it wasn't too bad because I just had my hand wrapped, but you could still see people staring at you and they're kind of okay, that's kind of odd. But I thought it was a little strange because I know that when you would walk into the store, you were in your disability, and then when you walk out, we have our disability all the way up until the point where we got in the car, and then you kind of just put it in the car and then you'll be fine. So I could kind of see how that could be controversial if someone saw us in the parking lot because people with these disabilities can't just like turn it off like we could for driving. Or I know when I had my hand wrapped, I didn't drive with it wrapped, so I unwrapped it and then I would, like, when I got in the car. So I think if people saw that, they'd be like, okay, well, why is she doing that? Like, is she mocking people or what? But I think it is a very educational tool, but on the same end of that spectrum, like, it could be seen as controversial to some people who don't know. Okay, so for this question, it asks, what was it like going into the community, thinking about client with physical limitations you experience, what recommendations would you make? And a reflection on your overall process. So I said that when I went into the community, I felt like people are kind of looking at me, kind of staring at me. I personally just really struggled with like holding the groceries, and then because I felt like I couldn't push a cart because it's hard to steer those big carts at Tops with just one hand. So I just carried the groceries. I feel like people were kind of staring at me because I was like balancing a bunch on my right arm, but I was reaching for stuff with my left hand. Or when I was cashing out, I felt like I was like holding up the line because I had to like put the wallet down and like unzip it each corner and then open it, like hold it open with my like wrist while I was pulling it out with my finger. So it was like, it felt like it took longer, but I'm sure that someone who does have this disability, it could be like stressful or anxiety provoking to go into stores during rush hour, like during busy times, because they don't want to hold up the line. They don't want to slow other people down. So I think that could be a big impact on that. I said a recommendation or like something to learn or look into would be to find some way to carry like the cash and the card so that it's not so difficult, because that was the big one that I struggled with in both like grocery shopping and then the community one where I had to go to the store and buy something. So that was something I really definitely struggled with. Also, maybe looking into ways to cope with like the psychological impact that it could have on people, because it is kind of having people look at you all the time. Like, if you see an older adult with a walker, you don't think twice about it. But if you see a young kid with a walker, that can kind of be like, oh, like, why does she have it? So maybe it could play an effect on what they do or how they feel. So for my meal, I chose to cook chicken and rice. And for this meal, I had everything I needed at home, so I didn't have to go shopping for that stuff, but I still went shopping for other food. The cooking part wasn't too difficult, like I said. It was a little bit hard to like get the chicken off the fork when I was like cooking it. But if I just like shook it a couple of times, it came off. I also struggled with turning the dial with my left hand on the oven. I think that's an odd motion. I clearly don't do it a lot with this hand. And then cutting the chicken, like I said earlier, was the hardest part for me. I really struggled with that. I ended up having to have my roommates help me. And eating it was just awkward. I didn't find it too difficult. It was just uncomfortable. It's odd. It's a different feeling. I never eat with my left hand, so that was a little strange for me. So because of that, I looked into finding different adaptive equipment. So I found like a rocker knife, which I thought would have been perfect for me. So you just have to have one hand. You have to be able to like supinate and pronate, and it like cuts the food, and you don't have to worry about stabilizing it. And that would have been perfect. And then I also wanted to cook peppers for my meal, but I was a little nervous to use a knife, like a really sharp knife. So I decided not to do it. But like someone with this disability, they can't just like not eat vegetables because they're hard to cut. So I also found special cutting boards. It like stabilizes the food for you, and you can just chop it. Or there's like a one-handed chopper where you just like push on it. So I think both of those would have been really helpful as well. So for my theories, my group theory was PEOP. My personal theory was sensory integration. So I found that both of these theories were very applicable to my disability. The PEOP model made me really realize how important the environment is to my, like, how I perform. So, I was way more comfortable in my own home versus out in public. And I think that was, like, that psychosocial impact. Or I was way more nervous in public because I didn't want to, like, drop something and have everyone look at me. Whereas if I dropped something at home, it wasn't as, like, embarrassing. What else? I acted more confident in public, or at my house too. Like, I was more willing to try new things or do different things. For sensory integration, I specifically realized how much of an impact it could be for cooking. As I was cooking, I was like, okay, well, how would I know that, like, if I didn't have sensation in my stomach, like, and I was pouring, let's say I made noodles and I was pouring it out and the steam was coming, if my arm was like right there, that could like burn it or it could make it feel like hot, and I wouldn't know if I didn't have that sensation in my stump. So that's something to kind of be aware of when I was doing that, when I was cooking and stuff. This helped me realize how important it is to consider these factors, like as I was experiencing it. So if I was, for example, if I was teaching a cooking group to people who have upper extremity amputations, I think it'd be really important to talk about sensation and like the safety behind that, because if you aren't aware, you don't have like that hot and cold sensation, then that could be really dangerous in the kitchen. Or if like you lean on something that's hot, you wouldn't know. So it could cause a really big safety issue. And then looking at that from the PEOP model, like if I were still to do a cooking group, it would be, I would more so focus on like adapting the area, or if seeing how the individual cooks in a kitchen that's not adapted to them. So like having things all over where they can't reach and stuff like that. I think that would make a big difference, and you could work on like rearranging the kitchen to make it successful. So putting a lot of things on like the left-hand side so you don't have to like awkwardly reach across your body and stuff like that. And then I think in order to design these issues, there needs to be more awareness around people who struggle with mobility or transportation issues. And it's kind of like it's a wide range of disabilities, and not all of them are visible. So the PEOP and the sensory integration model are both that it speaks perfectly for those, and they go hand in hand with that issue. And my last question is, what would make this assignment even better for students in the future? So for this one, I kind of struggled coming up with something, but I thought about if overall this experience, it was crazy. Like I didn't realize how much of an impact it would have on me, or how much like I said, I didn't realize how much I used my right hand for things. So doing that made a huge difference. But I said for the future, I think that students should try and do an activity. So like, let's say cooking, like I struggle cutting the chicken. So cutting the chicken, so I do that, I do the whole cooking activity, and then I do it again, but with appropriate adaptive equipment. So like with the rocker knife, with the cutting board, just so they can see how much of an impact that adaptive equipment has on the overall performance that the person's doing. Or if someone's in a walker, they can't reach something, having like supplying them with the reacher after they've done it without the reacher, just to kind of reassure and reinforce how great adaptive equipment can be, and that you know how to use it properly. So I think that would be something to make it a little bit more beneficial and more eye-opening, so they can kind of get more of a whole experience. So they get it like pre-OT and then post-OT with the adaptive equipment.